Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt Lift Eat podcast. I'm your host, Luke. Rolling solo today. Carter couldn't make it on, but I'm really excited for our guest. He's a fellow I met at the Mile High Expo up in Denver, and he's in the forefront of the fight that's going on right now in Colorado with the rights that are trying to be taken away in regards to trophy hunting, in quotes, for lions and bobcats and just hunting at large. So Dan Gates, welcome.
Thank you very much, Luke. Appreciate the opportunity. Nice meeting you at the Mile High Hunt and Fish Expo, but we had briefly talked about having this conversation, so I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. I think it's really pertinent, and it's been something that I've been wanting to get us as a company more involved in. We've been in a massive transition period, very busy, expo season, all that, traveling all over the country, which I know you're very familiar with these days.
Yeah.
You're just on the Meat Eater podcast. You've got a lineup of some other big ones, so I appreciate you taking the time to come on ours.
No, I think being able to carry a message and ride all of the coattails of the industry is not only imperative, but I think it's probably well deserved for the industry to start to get engaged on a broader scale and understand, the community to understand that the fight is part of the effort, and the effort turns around and brings us the finality of our endeavors, to get outside and to enjoy the outdoors and pursue wild game. And to be able to do that, you didn't think you used to have to fight for it. Well, we have to fight for it to be able to keep it.
Absolutely. And if we don't come together, and we talked about this at the show, there's so much infighting within the industry, and we can't get out of our own way. We need to really come together around these issues and have a united front, because the opposition is definitely united, and they don't care what they're going after. All the organizations will support it. They'll pour money, funding, attention, time into that, and we've got to do the same. And that's why I really want to harp on this, is that this isn't just a Colorado issue. This is a nationwide problem. And it's something that we definitely have to come together across North America for those that are care about our wild places and having the access and the hunting and the opportunities in the North American model, because the ballot box and the stuff that's going on it's a opening that they're taking every bit of advantage to.
Yeah, and I think, our community is starting to realize that there might be some chinks in the armor on our side, and they also start to realize how volatile or fragile our landscape is. And maybe not wholeheartedly, but they start to see glimmers of it. People told me over the last 15 years, well, I live in Idaho, I don't have to worry about that. Well, COVID hit, and everybody started a mass exodus out of Washington, Oregon, and California and into Idaho. And here you get 5 years later, and the Idaho potato guys are going, what the hell is going on? Idaho is starting to become a little bit like segments of Colorado. And you talk about guys in West Virginia or Texas or Tennessee, they're starting to see similar type trends where they didn't think it was that big of a deal until enough people move into those areas that don't know your background, your lifestyle, the game management laws, the stewardship that it takes for natural resources. And I think that it's our duty to educate, but there again, it's our duty to fight, to be able to turn around and educate and let people know this is why what we have, and to be able to continue to sustain that, how we continue to move forward.
Absolutely. Before we run down this too much, because we'll definitely get into this deep, I really want to kind of roll it back and get some context for who you are, what your background is, and kind of how you came up. And so, let's just talk about kind of how you grew up and what led you into the outdoors, into hunting and trapping, into this lifestyle.
I haven't told that story very often because I often thought it was boring to people. But I did the Mountainside podcast with Bobby Marshall, and Bobby kind of got me to open up a little bit because he was curious. And so my background, I didn't hunt or fish as a little kid. I had an enamorment with the outdoors and mountain men, and the opening of the West. I was actually born in Missouri. We moved out to Colorado in 1975. And immediately where we lived outside of Colorado Springs, you could see it from your house right there at the base of NORAD, right below the NORAD parking lot. There was a lodge, and we grew up in that lodge from the time I was 12. It used to be the J.R. Neal estate. It was a 6,000-acre ranch. Well, I don't think there's 6 acres up there anymore that doesn't have a house on it. But I had a pleasure of being able to start my hunt and trap and fish career at that point in time because we had access to it. And so I started working in a taxidermy shop in North Colorado Springs up by the dog track where they have the flea markets occasionally, but it used to be where they ran the dogs, and behind Bob's Liquor at 3528 North Prospect. So I'm telling you this, but your audience wouldn't know this. But I'm a local guy. I graduated out of Cheyenne Mountain High School, and I worked at the taxidermy shop from the time I was 12 until I was about 21, and also guided hunts and trapped and did a variety of different things. I had two jobs in my entire life up until now, and I've been a wildlife control operator for damn near the last 40 years. Guided hunts, bought fur, trapped, ran a trading post, old time type stuff in a modern day society. And when I was in high school, I had this mesmerizing effect about the landscape and mountain men and the open into the West and tradition and heritage. And I remember vividly my shop teacher, Merle Folsom, told me at one point in time, he says, "This is not 1840 and you are not Jim Bridger. You need to figure out a way to turn around and get a college education and go to school." Well, miraculously, not too long after I graduated from high school, I started a little business, and it was called Alpine Animal Control. And there was a gentleman that called me for some services, and it was that shop teacher. And that shop teacher, I showed up, and he goes, "Abby, go to hell. What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing this." And he said, "Well, I guess you did turn into be a Jim Bridger then, didn't you?" And so, that it kind of led me from. I mean, he let me build a muzzleloader and a cannon and shop at the time. We used to have shotguns. I had a '68 Pontiac Catalina station wagon that I trapped out of, for crying out loud, and I had more guns in that car at 16 or 17 years old than most firearm stores now do. I think. If I had a firearm, it was in that car, and you took it to school. There was no problems. There was no disruptions and no distractions like what we have today. But Mr. Folsom let me build cage traps and cannons and muzzleloaders, and I skinned coyotes and bobcats and raccoons in the welding booth at the shop during lunch hour, and then threw the carcasses in the trash can at the high school, and then turned around and took the hides to the taxidermy shop in the evening and prepared those hides. Um, it was the life and the dream as much as I could possibly get to be a mountain man at that point in time out of a '68 Pontiac Catalina station wagon. And so it kind of grew into something to where you know you're I don't know if you're born for something or you're bred for something or you just turn around and find something that does a call to us. And I think each and every one of us has that, depending on where our background and where we're from. But I've been doing it ever since. I grew up around game wardens and taxidermists and fur buyers and Western artists and outfitters and ranchers and trappers, and it kind of led me to where I'm at today. And I haven't really done a hell of a lot of things different except for the politics side, which I started playing in about 20 years ago, and now I'm ass deep to a 10-foot Indian, and so I do more politics than I do most of the other stuff. Even though I fight and I advocate for everything that we do, I still get a chance to go out and enjoy it on occasion. But a lot of what we do on our business side is a human animal conflict resolution business, and it might be some cage trapping, it might be some foothold trapping, but a lot of it is Department of Defense, utility infrastructures, commercial and industrial complexes, agriculture, and we do some residential, but we do a hell of a lot of contract work. And so that's a brief overview and synopsis to get us to where I'm at, and then we can get into the conversation about associations and representation and wearing the hangman's noose just because nobody else would do it. So,
Yeah, that was gonna kind of be my next question. So you said you got into politics about 20 years ago. What did that look like, and what drove you into that side of the house?
I think I watched 1992 when they banned the harvesting of bears in the spring and took hounds and baiting away. And then shortly after that, 4 years after that, there was a constitutional amendment where they banned trapping in the state of Colorado by a ballot initiative. Uh, and it kind of changed my mentality because I had some personal perspectives and ideologies, and the guys that were running the show then were younger than I am now, but they knew how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, what to do it, and whom to do it with, and they failed. And so, not holding any ill intent or feelings toward those guys or their ideologies, but I thought would be a better way. And the better way would be to try to figure out a way to commingle and collaborate and compromise, not negotiate, but compromise and find some commonality. And about 2006, 2007, we were still running multiple businesses on our own. And I went to a couple different commission meetings and went to the Capitol a couple of times and was told that I spoke fairly well, that I had some knowledge, and that it's something that maybe I ought to try to engage in to do some representation. I didn't think much about it until about 2011 or 12. And eventually I became the president for the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association, which I still am. And then all the way back up into 2016, a buddy of mine, Chris Journey, and myself started the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, which is a 501c4, which does us a little bit different opportunities than what a C3 like RMEF or MDF or National Wild Turkey. They're all C3s and they can do some things, but they can't do other things. And so it put us into a different landscape to be able to try to set the tone and narrative for conscientious wildlife management practices. And while we had our hands full at multiple levels, the state really started to change about 2015, 16, 17. And when this particular governor got elected in 2018 and his animal rights husband became more influential on the landscape, well, you lived here long enough, you started to see the changes dramatically. And while it wasn't always perfect, it's not been as bad as it is. And we've done a very, very formidable job since 2019 to stop every single assault coming our particular direction. And we've done everything that we could possibly do. We are undefeated at all levels through the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, the legislature, and this is our first ballot initiative that we've had to turn around and fight. We didn't get engaged in 2020 on the wolf initiative, Proposition 114, because we were doing, CRWM was doing mountain lion, bears, bobcats, prairie dogs, beavers, and all the other stuff. And the wolf guys took the wolf stuff on, and we continued to maintain our course of action this way. Well, you know how wolves ended up in 2020. We just recently put them on the ground in December. I sat on the stakeholder advisory group and was appointed to that. That was my contribution to the wolf management plan. And at the same time, we were still trying to figure out a way to fight all these other issues coming at us, and defeated everything unanimously until we got to the General Assembly in February of 22. And we won 4-1 when we were told that we would lose 4-1. And the opposition decided to come back with a ballot this year in 23 for the 24 election cycle. And it puts us where we're at today, fundraising, advocating, educating, fighting through the legal process, and now a wait and see approach to see what we have to deal with if they get the signatures by July 5th. That's kind of a little bit of a historical perspective of where I've been, where I'm at, and where we think we need to go.
Let's unpack the initiative that they're pushing towards the ballot with in regards to, one, how they're defining trophy hunting, two, what it effectively will mean for lion and bobcat management within the state of Colorado, and then the second, third order effects of that long term.
Yeah, so they started this off as a trophy hunting ban, and there was nothing other than a hunting ban, but they can use whatever language they want in the title, hence called the title board that we went through and fought, and then was challenged all the way through the Secretary of State. We were successful on getting that affirmation of the title that we wanted language to be changed in on January 4th of this year. The underlying element is that people think that this is a bobcat and a mountain lion and a lynx initiative. And while it deals with those two specific species right now, the wording of the initiative will set a statutory precedent to where essentially you could take any species and put in any one of those gaps. You take mountain lions out and put bighorn sheep in. You could take bobcats out and put mallard ducks in if you wanted to, because the statutory definition of trophy hunting in the measure, not the language of the title, but in the measure, specifically says that trophy hunting means intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping a mountain lion or bobcat. And the reason that's important is because the difference between regulatory and statutory is significant. Regulations can be changed, not at the drop of a hat, but through like the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission or a city council or something. Statutory becomes part of the state statute of what is done and how things are regulated and managed. Statutory definition of trophy hunting, which has never been defined in the United States, will set a precedent to the point to where any state any method of take or any species could be altered or changed because of the precedent that was set. That's why when you look at court cases and you look at court filings, they say, 1973, Ebert versus Gilbert or whatever that might be. There's a precedent that goes on to that. That's what would happen on this. The other component of this is that's actually raised concerns from a lot of our community that didn't think they should be concerned about this, is that this talks specifically about the utilization of hounds, dogs, and it talks about electronic collars and e-tracking devices. It does not specify specifically for mountain lions, although in this context, hounds could not be utilized to harvest mountain lions or bobcats, but they're banning the harvest of mountain lions and bobcats anyway. But because it's a statutory change, there's an opportunity for any dog user to be subject to these sort of scrutinies or criticisms. And so when they say electronic collars and training devices, that could be an upland bird dog, or it could be a waterfowl dog, or a coon dog, or maybe a coyote dog. Maybe it could be a beagle. I've even had ranchers ask me, could this be a stock dog? Well, as soon as you have specific definitions and criteria that fall into one statutory precedent, tell me where that wouldn't play into an easy open door policy for anybody else to go, look, they did it over here. Why shouldn't we do it over there? Look, this should be as good as what that is. And so I think that that's starting to open up the eyes to a lot of our counterparts, a lot of our advocates, our allies, because we've been often asked over the course of the last 8 months, why should this bother me? I don't hunt mountain lions or bobcats. And then when you let them read the definition of trophy hunting and what that does, and let them read the dog component, they go, wait a minute, whoa, back up there, read that back. And people start to understand that smoke and mirrors of animal extremist organizations is to get what they can get, how they can get to get as much bang for their buck as what they can, and then move across the landscape. And I'll make this one statement and then go into the other conversations that you want, Luke. But they've defined their efforts of attempting to take care of the low-hanging fruit, which is the mountain lion and bobcat hunters. Now, there's more mountain lion and bobcat hunters than there is bighorn sheep, mountain goat, and moose hunters combined. But they went after what they considered to be the low-hanging fruit. And what they've said publicly is, we went after the low-hanging fruit, then we want to cut the branch off, cut the tree down, and then go into the forest. Well, if they think that we are the low-hanging fruit and there's half as many moose, goat, and sheep hunters combined as what there is mountain lion hunters, tell me who the hell's next as the low-hanging fruit. And a reference to that is Tris Zornio with the Colorado Sun last year in November quoted in an article, why are bighorn sheep any different than mountain lions? Why are we harvesting our state animal? That's setting the table for their tone and narrative of where they want to go and what they want to do. And maybe it has to do with cow elk and doe deer. Maybe it has to do with archery season. Maybe it has to do with bighorn sheep. Maybe it has to do with another restriction or prohibition on bears on top of what they have. But I can tell you, this is not a bobcat and a mountain lion deal. It's just that they were looking for a catchphrase, something that was a shiny object that they thought they could get across the finish line under this General Assembly and this gubernatorial administration. It's not about mountain lions and bobcats. It's about hunting. And people need to understand it's about all hunting.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important to highlight. And when we look at and correct me if I'm wrong here, my understanding, the organization that started this, it was, I don't remember what they called it, but it's a lady out of Boulder. But so some people might look at this and be like, oh, this is a Colorado problem. But when you look at the funding, kind of talk about that, the outside money from these larger organizations that are, the animal rights activists, the anti-hunting, that how much, time, money, and, effort and support they're pouring into this initiative.
Yeah. The gal's name is Samantha Bruger or Samantha Miller, and she moved here from Washington State.
I actually invited her on this podcast and she never responded.
No, I doubt that she probably would. You could ask her to see if she wants to go punch for punch with me or tit for tat with me. I don't think that she'd take you up on that either. But they like to mislead the general public into this fallacy and misnomer falsehoods of what not just mountain lion and bobcat management is, but just sound science-based wildlife management is. She moved from Washington. She was working for Wild Earth Guardians. She was hired to run this campaign for Cats Aren't Trophies, CATS. She was hired by Wayne Pacelli, the former CEO of the Humane Society of the United States. I think the Animal Welfare Action Institute and the Institute for Humane Economy, two different organizations that are well funded with Mr. Pacelli's background and connections. They're the primary large funders of this campaign. One of which, maybe both, but one of which is based out of Bethesda, Maryland. And then Carol Baskins has got some credibility and notoriety to fame with this, and she's off the Tiger King. Then you got Pat Craig with the Animal Sanctuary up in northeastern Colorado, northeast of Denver. Many other organizations that are participating in some capacity, if nothing else, through acknowledgement and acceptance of the practice of what they're trying to create. While they haven't raised as much money as what we would think that they have, they're not something that should be taken lightly. And while we have held them at bay, literally, no pun intended with the hound terminology, but while we've held them at bay, we've turned every stone over to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's before we had to do the next level, the next stage of the campaign. And so when I say that, that's to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. When you hire a team, when you hire a firm, attorney firm, when you hire campaign managers, when you have lobbyists, when you're running campaigns, it's not a cheap venture. It's not like going to 7-Eleven and buying a Slurpee. You're going to 7-Eleven and buying the whole damn liquor counter. And I think it's something that most of our community has not been fully aware of. They don't understand that when you fight at this level, this is a campaign, just like a presidential campaign, just like a gubernatorial campaign or a ballot initiative campaign for taxes or roads and bridges or abortion or healthcare or whatever it might be. There's millions of dollars that go into that stuff. And I will tell you that if this fully goes to the mat to November 5th and they get the signatures by July 5th, this will be a multi-million-dollar campaign on both fronts to be able to turn around and save hunting on one end so they can turn around and try to take hunting on the other end. And our fear is that if they take it here underneath this umbrella with this terminology, it's an easy push for them to turn around and go wherever the hell they want, whether it's in state or out of state.
Yeah, and that's something that I think we've seen in the past is they kind of shift their focus, and it seems like they kind of probe, and it's a fairly deliberate tactic. And it's like, what do they see? Because Washington had the spring bear, they went after spring bear in
Yep.
Washington, and then it seemed to be shortly thereafter. Then, and I'm not near as plugged in. I'm kind of just seeing all this from the
Yeah.
outside. But to me, and I have a military background. I just got out of the army, so I tend to think strategically in some ways. And it's like this is, they're kind of probing the lines. They're seeing where they can find that low hanging fruit. And then when they find that foothold, they saw the wolf initiative pass, and it's like, all right, now they're rolling with the cats and pushing here. And if they were to win here, then it just becomes that snowball effect, and they get some momentum, and then they shift somewhere else, and they just keep going, and they're just going to keep hitting at these different angles until they can keep eroding on the things that seem easy, because they don't play fair, right?
No.
The main logo for the Cats Aren't Trophies, it's a kitten. It's not even an animal that can be hunted. And so the misleading and the stuff, it's a juvenile, at least. Like it's not a full grown, definitely not a male. And it's just, we continue to see this, or when it's like in bear hunting, it's a sow with cubs, right? It's not even something that can be hunted, right? And it's
Yeah.
the misinformation. So what are you guys doing over at CRWM to combat that misinformation? And because this is something I've really, looking at it from the outside, I've been really impressed with, is how you guys are kind of taking a different approach than the echo chamber that we tend to have within the industry, where we're just kind of talking to each other. So what techniques and tactics are you guys utilizing to try to counter that misinformation that's coming out?
I think the biggest thing, and I appreciate the praise. I mean, the biggest thing we're trying to do is tell the story and tell the truth. You've got 350 scientists, biologists in Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Let them do their damn job. The facts and the data, the statistics, the history, the experience that those guys bring within an agency of 1,000 different individuals with between the parks and the wildlife side. But just on the science side of it, let the guys do the job. Let the guys and the gals do the work that they became experts in their field. Some are experts in black-footed ferrets. Some are experts in bighorn sheep. Some are experts in carnivores like bobcats and mountain lions. I've not seen an expert come from the animal rights side except for to bitch and complain about any game agency in this country. They all have their science and their data and their facts. So why the hell didn't they work for a freaking agency that's managing the wildlife then? They're working for organizations to try to disrupt the management of those wildlife species because they don't like hunting. They say that there needs to be no management. Matter of fact, I think they'd be completely happy, that wolf that out of the 10 that was killed by the mountain lion that was just up in Larimer County, because that was nature doing it. Well, that might be fine and dandy, but we have 5.9 million people in this state with 84 million visitors. This is not the 1700s. This is not Yellowstone. And I think for us to be able to convey the message that we're conveying, to get that point across, you have to do it with an open mind, understanding that there's a significant amount of the target audience, that voter audience is 75 or 80% of the entire population. They don't know one way or the other about what we're talking about. They don't know whether cats are right or whether we're right. So we're hoping that we turn around and take the science side of it and give them the facts and the data and the statistics and say, look, here's what the experts say. The brain surgeon says that we should do this. Well, I would take the brain surgeon's opinion if I was looking for an opinion from a brain surgeon. If you don't want the experts to do it, and people want antagonists and extremists and activists to run our wildlife resources, where do you think we're going to be 100 years from now? We know we're 100 years from now from the previous 100 years because science and stewardship and conservation and the North American model led us to this point. Telling the story about the facts and the data is the best way that we think that we can, and not try to so much go tit for tat and punch for punch with these guys, because my grandpa said a long time, you can't argue with an idiot, and if you do, you're just an idiot. And I think that there's some adage to that old wisdom. Well, my grandpa was wise, but he wasn't a wildlife biologist. I mean, wildlife biologists are wise in their field. Now, I might not agree with every single thing that they do, but at least they've got the data and the statistics and the study and the compilation of information to say this is why we base our opinions on this. And I think getting that story across to the general public is not only imperative, but it's in our best interest because we're trying to educate the target audience, the non-hunting, uneducated, ignorant, not stupid, ignorant target audience when it comes to wildlife and conservation.
Kind of go through what you guys are doing to actually like physically get that message out there, like through social media, through paid advertising. That's been something that I think has been really kind of a differentiator. I haven't seen a lot of organizations actually leveraging social in that way, but I think it's really important because where are these voters? Well, they're on social media. They're not on a radio show. They're not on, maybe they're listening to the podcasts, but it's getting that to the audience that's not within our echo chamber. And I think you guys are doing a good job of that. So kind of talk through what y'all's strategy is there and what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's kind of been complex, and I don't have the roadmap all laid out in my head of where we're going to go and how we need to get there, but I do have a fair amount of boots on the ground institutional knowledge and experience. And I think that we have two audiences that we need to talk to. I don't need to talk to the anti-hunter, to the extremist. There's no sense trying to talk to a vegan. You can't talk to an atheist about church. I mean, there's believers and there's non-believers, and there's the middle of the roaders. We don't need to talk seriously to the sportsmen and women, but we do need to educate them as much because a lot of them didn't know what a ballot initiative was, especially when you start talking about other states. They didn't know about statutory definition. They didn't know the difference between that and regulatory. They didn't know about the complexities and the volatilities of the landscape when you start talking about predator management versus ungulate management. And so, not to mention, 6 million people on the landscape. Educating our rank and file guys, our hook and bullet guys and gals, has been imperative about the process and procedure to get us to a level to where we can actually put up a formidable argument. Some of that's fundraising, some of that's education, some of that's engagement. we haven't really formally started into a major campaign as of yet to the target audience. And the main reason is because they're still gathering signatures on the opposition side. And it's hard to say what that, first of all, this is Initiative 91. That will not be the final number that is on the ballot because that's through the initial stages to get it through the title board process and actually put it on the ballot. If they get it on the ballot, it might be Initiative 128. It might be Initiative 164. There's no sense in talking to that target and confusing them at this point outside of science-based wildlife management, the North American model, and experts that manage our Colorado wildlife. To try to get into the nuances of the caveats of what the antis are promoting, how do you talk to reasonable, logical people that are non-hunters and try to counter what you consider to be lunacy or idiotic differentiations about how things are seen from their personal perspective? And I'm talking about the antis. The antis believe one thing, we believe another. Let's let the facts play out and let the middle of the roaders decide what they believe based upon the facts. So once we get to the point to where they get the signatures, which there's a possibility they will and there's a possibility they won't, but they get the signatures, now we start into a full-blown campaign, an assault, an attack to try to disrupt and diffuse every single thing that they're doing. And we will do everything from social media to network television to radio to print to yard signs to billboards to traffic trucks, every single thing that's available to us in any way, shape, or form. We are fully prepared financially and otherwise to unleash what they have never seen before in the state of Colorado, and to unleash it in a science-based perspective to where it's not my perspective, it's not your perspective, it's the facts and the data that drives to where we're at now and where we need to go. And if the logical-minded people of Colorado do not want to listen to the facts, the statistics, and the truths, then there's not anything that we can do to turn around and educate them. But I think the people of Colorado are smart enough to say, do you want scientists or do you want activists? And that's what it's going to come down to. If we want activists managing our wildlife resources, I guess I would have to say, let them have it, and let's see where we're at 10 years from now, because I got a really damn good idea where we're going to be. If you want scientists to do it, our wildlife resources will continue to flourish. They'll be abundant. They'll be highly regulated. They'll be sought after to be able to be watched and to be able to be harvested and consumed under the North American model of wildlife conservation.
That's awesome. I'm glad we have, folks like you getting involved to this level. It's really important. If I'm, as a currently resident of Colorado, what do I need to be doing at, my level? Let's say I don't have a company in the hunting space. As an everyday run-of-the-mill outdoorsman, what should I be doing right now to be getting involved, to be trying to spread this message, to be combating this?
So we always direct people to our website, and it sounds like it's a sales pitch, but that's the first and foremost place that people can get the truthful information. And I say truthful because we take the facts and the data, the videos, and the statistics from Parks and Wildlife. So if you can't find it from Parks and Wildlife, it's on our website, savethehuntcolorado.com. You can also look at the language for the initiative, and the language for the initiative of 91, which is what we're dealing with, is there. But they also should look at the initiative 101 language, which was another attempted initiative that we defeated, while at the same time we were fighting this one. You want to see how screwed up these people think. Look at the language that they tried to interject and impose while we were fighting 91 and making significant changes. Look at the language on the website and you'll just sit and go, seriously? This is what they wanted? Because they were willing to sacrifice one thing for another, hoping that they would be able to bite the whole apple off instead of just getting a piece of it. And we defeated their efforts on 101 at the same time we were fighting 91. That is a key component of education to the listeners and viewers here in Colorado. Find out the facts and the data. Secondarily, vote, and vote no against ballot box biology. But better yet, Luke, vote no against things that you're not sure are going to be in your best interest. And that maybe it doesn't have to do with wildlife. We have 100 legislators in the state of Colorado. There's a fair amount of them that'll be up for election this year. If those legislators are not acting in your best interest, depending on what district you live in, you should make them aware of who you are and what you do, what business you run, and what you like to advocate, or what district you like to turn around and recreate in. If they don't know those people that live on the landscape and that their constituents are reaching out to, if they don't know who you are, how the hell do they speak on your behalf? And if you don't know who they are, who put them in office on your behalf? Because somebody is acting on your behalf one way or the other. So between the legislative side of things, the ballot side of things, there's a gun ballot initiative that's going to be up for excise tax, which is 6.5% of additional taxes on firearms and ammunition that was run through the General Assembly here recently as a referred measure. There's a fur ban initiative in the city of Denver that the Denver and City County will be able to vote on. It says it's a fur ban. If you read it, it's a fur fiber ban. It includes beaver felt cowboy hats, fishing lures, fly fishing lures, Native American crafts. There's a slaughterhouse ban for the city and county of Denver. It'll ban the one lamb slaughterhouse in northern Denver. The largest one in the western United States has been there since 1919 or something. They're talking about food. They're talking about fiber. They're talking about conservation. They're talking about recreation and hunting and fishing. This is extremist overreach in an attempt to turn around and try to change the makeup of the Colorado landscape, the tradition and the heritage of what we have, the historical precedent that what we've got. It's the West. That doesn't mean we kill everything. But by God, it doesn't mean that you don't turn around and utilize the resources and manage it appropriately either. So the people of Colorado need to pay attention not just to this specific ballot initiative, but all the ballot initiatives that are going to come up and all the elected individuals that are going to come up, because those people will continue to make decisions on your behalf for the next 2, 4, 6, or 8 years, whether you put them there or not. And you better damn sure know who they are. The last and final thing that people can do once you go to the website, help us fund these efforts and help us defeat these efforts by going to SaveTheHuntColorado.com. You can donate. And up until June 13th, you can also participate in 2 raffles that Safari Club International, the Colorado chapter, is running for us. And one is a mountain lion hunt and a mount. It's donated by the Whitaker Brothers Outfitting and Ovis Wildlife Taxidermy. And another raffle that they're running for us up until June 13th is a Gunworks 7mm PRC rifle with a scope that Gunworks and Salida Gun Shop have donated to help us generate additional funds from a variety of different sectors. So you can donate, you can shop if you want to. You can buy a damn T-shirt or a hat or a tumbler, or I don't know what else they got on there, but there's a bunch of stuff that we got. You can donate, you can do that, or you can turn around and buy a raffle ticket. Fund, educate, inform, engage, and then turn around and start spreading the message about what we need to do to at least turn the state back to some sort of color in the crayon box. It doesn't need to be all red and it doesn't need to be all blue, but right now it's about 40 shades of blue.
Let's go ahead and we'll play a quick clip promoting this raffle real quick that you guys got going on.
To help us defeat the Colorado hunting ban, go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com and check out the raffles. There's a mountain lion hunt and taxidermy raffle and a Gunworks rifle package. Also, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, everybody should definitely go take advantage of that. I'll be participating. I could use a new rifle, so that sounds awesome. So same question now, and outside of obviously the funding, but what can non-residents be doing to try to support this fight? And understood, going to the website, getting involved, checking out, and definitely donating, which I encourage everybody to pour into this cause. But what's how does somebody that's not a resident of this state make their voice heard as somebody who might want to come out to Colorado to recreate? They come out and take advantage of OTC tags. They come out here for skiing, anything.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing that we've had people ask, and about 75% of all of our contributions have been from out of state, and the majority of those people have got interest in Colorado. They apply for preference points, or they hunt here regularly. Maybe they've got property. Maybe they just like to hunt with their buddy. They've got skin in the game to be able to hunt here, so they've been willing to kick money in just as much, if not more, than what the state residents are. But I would encourage them to pay particular attention that if they don't think it's happening in their state, pay particular attention to what is happening here in Colorado. Because if it happens here, you sit back with a map of the United States and throw 6 darts, and you tell me where it's not going to happen. And I guarantee that where your dart landed, something is going on in some capacity to turn around and stop us from being on the landscape, from being able to manage our wildlife through a consumptive use, highly regulated program, to be able to shoot, to be able to own firearms. Doesn't matter. Take 6 darts, throw it at a board. If you don't hit Colorado, you're going to hit 6 other places that are under attack or assault in some capacity. Educate yourself about your own state. Educate yourself about your neighboring states. Educate yourself about the states that you strive to go to, or maybe you think about retiring to, or skiing, like what you said, or maybe just going on vacation. I don't want to go spend money in any state, and my wife and I have made a pact about this. We do not go anywhere to spend money in any state that turns around and tries to ban the hunting rights and privileges of science-based wildlife management. We damn sure don't do it on a gun level, because I carry a gun about wherever I go. If I can't carry a gun there, I don't want to go there. There's nothing there that I need to see so bad, because those are the same type of people, same type of ideologies on the politics side that are here in Colorado trying to disrupt every single thing that I stand for, my way of life, my beliefs, my tradition, my heritage. And I think out-of-staters, non-residents should take heed, look inside their own state boundaries to make sure that it's not happening. But look across the boundaries, look across the river, and see what's happening in those other states. Because if it happens there and they accomplish it, they got to go somewhere. And if you're contiguous or not, who says that they're not going to turn around and choose your state to be able to go to? So educate, inform, engage, participate, most of all, vote. But there again, you got one vote, but that doesn't mean you can change the world. But 14 million sportsmen, if they all vote, they can do a pretty damn good dent in a lot of different things.
Yeah, that really, I think the perception, especially living on the Front Range, is that it's very one-sided. And what opened my eyes to that was how closely the wolf reintroduction passed. I mean, it was. I mean, you know the exact numbers. If you want to kind of talk about that a little bit, I think that should really give us, as outdoorsmen, some real hope, and that this fight isn't lost, and we need to keep fighting.
Yeah, I want to say something about that too, because the original polls that were pulled at the beginning of 2020 on Proposition 114, the Wolf Initiative, there was a 68% favorability rating, that 68% of the people would have voted to bring wolves in the state of Colorado. With a little bit of fight, not enough, but a little bit of fight, the groups that were fighting that to try to oppose it dropped it down from 68 to 51.9. Now, that's a monumental push when you have a limited amount of resources. Now, what I would say is if the state as a whole would have engaged more appropriately or expeditiously, maybe they would have been able to turn around and change the vote. Maybe it would have been enough. I know that for a fact that there's a significant amount of buyer's remorse on the wolf issue. Now, is that enough to sway the people on this side? I'm not sure. But I can tell you, with the fur ban deal in Denver, the slaughterhouse deal, the gun issue that's going to be on the ballot, the mountain lion issue, all the other issues that will be on the ballot this year pertaining to a variety of other subjects, a presidential election year, there's going to be a hell of a lot of people that come out and vote. And I believe that if it's a trend similar to what we saw in 2020, that not only are we going to win, we're going to win by substantial margins. And that'll start to set the tone and narrative about how future politicians look at what Colorado is doing, where it was, where it's going, and where they need to take it to be able to get the votes. Because the animal rights groups don't like to lose. Politicians don't like to lose. There's an opportunity, I really believe, that we can capitalize on some of the things that are currently happening based upon what previously happened, and then capitalize on that moving to the next level. Because in 2 years, 2026, Governor Polis won't be running. There'll be 2 new candidates, a Democrat running for governor and a Republican running for governor. And they're going to be very, very interested to see what happened 2 years prior during the last election when it comes to agriculture issues, when it comes to wildlife and conservation, hunting, guns. I think there's going to be a giant turnover if we're able to be victorious. And I think people are starting to open up their eyes to the point to where this is not as left or right as what one would believe. It's still in the middle. And I think all of this stuff is completely up for grabs.
Yeah, I think so too. What was the numbers that the wolf passed?
51.9 to 49.1. And it started out at 68% favorable and ended up at 51.9. So if we're anywhere close in that margin of error, just on this particular issue, not even counting the fur ban or the cowboy hat deal or whatever you want to call it, not even counting that stuff, if we're any close to that margin of error, and we have a little bit of buyer's remorse on the wolf deal because wolves are in the damn news, seems like 14 times a week now. If any of that gives us any bump whatsoever, and the extremist mentality gives us another bump because look, most of us are middle of the roaders. We're pretty logical. We might have different ideologies and maybe some partisan politics in our own heads and within our own households. But for the most part, we're fairly logical. And the reason I can say that is, this logo that on this side here, I'm wearing the logo, and it's my business. I'm in people's houses. I'm in their businesses about wildlife related issues. Uh, for somebody to invite a contractor in their business and then start spewing all this politics on them because you wear this little patch or you have this sign on your truck or something, we became the wildlife experts because they don't know. They called you. You're in their house to solve their problem. Then they start asking you about bears and lions and wolves and prairie dogs and everything else under the sun. There's a little bit of consternation that I see in a heavy Democratic constituency that we deal with, that they often ask, why are we doing this by ballot? Why are we doing this without the scientists? And I asked them, I said, well, how are you going to vote? How did you vote in 2020? Some voted for the wolf, some voted against the wolf. But the majority of the ones that voted for the wolf that I've been in their houses or in their businesses, they wouldn't vote for the wolf again. And that makes me think that they probably won't likely vote for the lion deal either.
Real quick, just for context for some of our folks who might be outside of Colorado or outside of the West and not understand the wolf reintroduction. Can you just kind of talk through what was proposed, what happened, and then really the real issues, which wasn't really necessarily just the wolves that were placed there. It's the lack of management or the restrictions on management going forward, and some of that the things that we kind of a lot of folks foresaw happening that have started to happen.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, I mean, it's the first time an attempted introduction was done of an endangered species by ballot. I mean, there's been endangered species introductions by legislators and by organizations but not by ballot, not by the vote of the people. We have to be the first at everything. Where Colorado, we did that. Now we had a legislative bill this year to introduce wolverines, and we'll be the first to introduce wolverines anywhere on the planet. And we have to be the first at everything. So going back multiple years, certain individuals, once wolves were introduced into the Rocky Mountains, the upper Rocky Mountains, and as you well know, they've been introduced all across the upper Midwest and all the way to the West Coast. It was the theory that Colorado would be a good launching pad. I don't think it had anything to do personally with the actual introduction of wolves. I think it has to do, conspiracy theorists or whatever, but I think it has to do with putting more apex predators on the landscape, creating less of an ungulate population, pedestalizing the predators. You turn around and get rid of mountain lions and bear hunting. You bring wolves in. All that stuff needs to eat. You need less hunters on the landscape. This is pretty generalized across the upper Midwest, the northern states, and to the West Coast. And so the people that wanted to bring wolves in decided the best way to do that they couldn't get the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do it. They couldn't get it done just by a legislative declaration or an order. So they went to the ballot. And most of the people that I ran into thought, oh, it'd be cool to hear a wolf howl. I'd love to see wolves. I went to Yellowstone and I saw wolves. This isn't Yellowstone. And I think that the average person had this grandiose idea that it was the howl of the wolf, the call of the wild. And so when they put that on the ballot, they did it to bring a certain amount of wolves in, which we'll be looking at between 150 and 350 wolves in this state in some way, shape, or form. unless there's a court injunction or there's another ballot initiative that stops it. But their ideology is to bring wolves in and bring nature back through a rewilding program. And you hear rewilding often. It's, bringing it back to where it used to be. There again, we got 5.9 million people in this state. You ain't going to bring it back to where it used to be unless we all move out or you kill us all. And that's where we are. They have ideas of making things like they were, or this vision of like Yellowstone. Well, if you want to compare Colorado to Yellowstone, then I think that you need to re-educate yourself. And if they're going to continue to do things like this through a ballot because of something that they envision, Yellowstone's a great place. Wolves did fine there. But they didn't do as fine throughout Wyoming and Montana in other places that wasn't Yellowstone. They haven't done as fine. They've populated, but I say fine in the context of where they still affected wildlife populations. They've still affected human populations. They still caused this significant consternation on a landscape between pro and con, for and against, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. And they're all comparing things to Yellowstone, but none of them live in Yellowstone. And Colorado's not a Yellowstone. Colorado never become a Yellowstone. And what they're trying to impose here through ballot box biology and initiatives like this are something that can never happen like what they envision, except unless they're trying to take us off the landscape and make hunting and fishing and consumptive conservation and wildlife management an extinct proposition.
When you were talking about they're rewilding this idea of what it used to be. Well, the reality is all the way back through the megafauna that we have today, humans were a part of that, part of the ecosystem, part of hunting. Like the first forms of media that we have in the history of the world is pictures of, hunts on the walls of caves. And it's this weird, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just this weird thought process of like, somehow everything is better if we're not there. But we are here and we're going to be here, and they're here. And so like it's this whole idea just it kind of baffles me.
It baffles you because you mentioned that about the petroglyphs on the walls, and there was a statement made by multiple animal activists that I've dealt with over the years that they said, if you take a picture and hang it on the wall, that is a trophy, and you are a trophy hunter, and now you are bastardizing that animal. And I'm thinking, they were drawing pictures 29,000 years ago on the wall. Was that a story, or was it the guy says, look, here's my trophy room, and I turn around and put this picture up there? I don't know, but it's the way that they've translated us into their context of what is right, wrong, or indifferent. And to your point, Luke, I'm in this ecosystem. I'm part of this ecosystem. I've been around more live animals and dead animals than 99% of the animal activists I've ever been around. There's population ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys that I've seen in my short life. What we see in a short period of time does not mean that that's the way it always has been or the way it always will be. But I can tell you, in the case of mountain lions, for instance, when they were a nuisance up until 1965 in the state of Colorado, there was less than 200 of them on the landscape. Nobody managed them for anything other than to get rid of them. 1965, they became a big game animal. And today, with regulated hunting, 55 or 60 years later, we've got over 4,000 to 5,000 mountain lions in the state of Colorado. How the hell are we being detrimental to the species? And I think when you explain those type of facts and the historical side, going all the way back to the beginning of time with hunter-gatherers, you explain that to people that are not. What they do to go into Whole Foods and walk out with a grocery cart full of stuff is no different than you and I go into the woods to turn around and try to harvest something and bring it back. We both pay for the opportunity. It's just a matter of what we choose to be able to eat and how we decided to get it. We have to put our shoes on their feet so they can walk a mile in our shoes to say, oh, I kind of understand. I don't necessarily want to do it myself, but I understand. The antis, they don't want to wear your shoes or their shoes or anybody else's shoes. And I think that if we can get to the point to where we're explaining to people about why we do what we do and why we shouldn't allow it to be bastardized or marginalized, that we should pedestalize it, that pretty soon we become the talking point. We become the narrative setter and the tone setter, and the people start listening to our side because we're bringing logic and reason and facts and data, history and preservation and perspective to the table, as opposed to take it away. 0 is the number. There's no solution. There's no recommendation. There's no alternative. There's 2 different ideologies here, and it's up to us to figure out how we're going to turn around and present it. And I think if we win this November or before, we will be able to present it more formidably in the centennial state. But maybe somebody will turn around and capitalize on our efforts here and say, we need to do this in Arkansas. We got to do this in West Virginia. We need to do this in Nevada. Because I think that that's the only way we're going to be able to stop the locust on the cornfield of animal extremism.
I agree 100%, Dan. I love what you guys are about and what you're doing. I'm glad you're here. You're a hell of a spokesperson for what we're about and what our lifestyle is. I want to go ahead and start, and it's going to take me a little while to get it all worked out because I'm technologically challenged, but I'm going to go ahead and set it up on our website. I want to do 5% of all of our merchandise sales going forward, going into CRWM to support this fight and kind of put our money where our mouth is. And being a Colorado-based company with what we're trying to do, we're not the biggest company out there. We're not making millions of dollars, but we're going to throw in into the pool here to fight this. And anything you guys need from our small platform to manpower to showing up and doing stuff, we'll be there. So you got our full backing.
I appreciate it very much. I really do. And that's badass that you guys offer that. And it just shows that the industry itself is really paying attention. And you look at the generosity from the podcasting side to the celebrity sportsman side and from all the shows that we've been able to do and the merchandise that organizations or industry leaders are kicking out on our behalf. And it's, to where the funds come back into this fight. It's not my fight. It's not CRWM's fight. It's all of our fight. We just happen to be the tip of the spear on this. And because we're a C4, we can take that fight to another level on behalf of everybody within the state of Colorado that maybe other states or entities or organizations want to emulate or duplicate. And so I just look forward to continuing, ongoing conversations and relationships. And if you don't mind, I'd like to plug something.
Absolutely.
Because you're in Colorado Springs. August 9th and 10th in Florence, Colorado, between Florence and Canyon City, is Outdoorsman Days. And anybody that's in Colorado, you can go to ColoradoOutdoorsmansdays.com and look it up. But we got Cameron Haynes, Derek Wolf, Ray Livingston, Laramie Sasquatch Miller, Jermaine Hodge. There's shooting and archery shooting, fishing derbies, seminars, demonstrations, a chuck wagon dinner on Friday night, and a banquet on Saturday night. It's a 2-day event, camping on site. Go to ColoradoOutdoorsmansdays.com. All the money that generated from that particular event, and it's our second year event, goes to saving the hunt in Colorado. And it's right after the Derek Wolf Invitational shoot, which is up at his place in Fairplay the week before. And I would encourage people to come together and learn from a lot of the experts in the field, but learn about the strategies of what we need to do to be able to hold this net together so we can catch and capture what we've strived to do over the course of the last 6 or 7 years for CRWM to send it to the next level. And I think that Outdoorsman Days and these other events and co-sponsorship events and industry leaders like you guys that are willing to step up are part of that roadmap and that playbook that we all need to participate in.
Absolutely. Where can folks find you guys on? We got savethehunt.com for your website. Where can folks find you guys on social media?
Yeah, savethehuntcolorado.com. And the social media is c.r.w.m on Instagram, and Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management on Facebook. And then there's a YouTube channel there as well. And so you can look under the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. I looked this morning, I was inquiring about some things for a webmaster, and if you punch up Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, I didn't realize there was that much crap in my dumb face coming up every time, but there's a lot of it. So we're just in it for the short haul, for the long fight, because we know it's not going to be over this November, but we know that we got to continue to carry the torch on behalf of our efforts. The houndsmen, the bow hunters, the rifle hunters, the elk hunters, the upland bird hunters, the trappers, doesn't matter. We're all in this together. We are sportsmen, and we should define ourselves as that, because without that, we're just individuals on the landscape and we're easy pickings and the low-hanging fruit for the opposition.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate your time, this conversation, and what you're doing for all of us as outdoorsmen.
Appreciate your guys' help and time. Appreciate the generosity and look forward to updating you on a victory.
I can't wait. Everybody, don't do a whole lot of calls to action on this. Please go check out SaveTheHuntColorado.com. If you got some extra cash, donate it. Even if you're not here in Colorado, a lot of you guys come out. We've hosted hunts out here for team members all over the country. If you guys have interest in hunting in Colorado, if you're interested in preserving our legacy as hunters and our access and our ability to do what we love, please get involved. Please support. As always, we appreciate the hell out of you guys. Talk to you next week.